Excuse me, officer, I have a question.
Hey guys, how's it going? Jordan Locke here. We have been covering the tragic disappearance and subsequent mysterious situations surrounding Nolan Wells. Of course, Nolan left with his friends the morning of July 4th to go and party on Horn Island, and those same friends said that they left him there and he just randomly disappeared after that, and no one knows exactly what happened. Now, lots of people, including myself, are questioning the story of the friends. The story just seems a bit far-fetched. There are so many inconsistencies, so many holes, so many gaps, and it leads one to wonder what they are covering up and why their stories are just not making sense. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but Nolan Wells would have been 19 this Wednesday had he still been alive. There is a video of family and friends celebrating his 19th birthday and using that instance as an opportunity to call for greater transparency and accountability with law enforcement investigating this case, right? So far, it's been murky at best, right? We have the governor of Mississippi coming out shortly after this investigation began and stating that there is no reason to believe that there is any foul play involved.
I don't know all of the facts surrounding the case. I have yet to see a fact or a piece of evidence that suggests any foul play. But if there is, I feel confident that the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, the members at the Department of Public Safety that deal with these crimes, if there had been one, they will find it and they will do what is necessary.
We have a district attorney acting extremely suspicious. One of the friend's mothers happens to be a judge in that area, and we know that down south, nepotism goes a long way. So a lot of people are very suspicious about the process involved in investigating Nolan Wells' death, and they have every right to be suspicious. So unfortunately, there are no new details in this Nolan Wells case, right? We're just kind of in a holding pattern right now, waiting to see what happens. A lot of content creators are pumping out a lot of videos and kind of rehashing the same old information, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think that a lot of it is really clickbait. A lot of the stuff we've heard a dozen times already, and there just really isn't a lot of new significant information. But I wanted to take a step back and focus on the larger picture at play here. And that larger picture is the mysterious disappearances, especially recently, of Black people across the country and law enforcement's lack of urgency when dealing with these disappearances. So of course, Nolan Wells' disappearance is an example of this phenomenon, but there are so many cases, even just in this year alone in 2026. There have been 7 cases so far of Black people found unalived, found hung, and in the vast majority of these situations, the police, with very little to no investigation, determine that the cause of unaliving is suicide. And I'm sure we've all heard this story before, especially down south, right? This happens to be a very big thing whenever a Black person goes missing down south and the person ends up dead. Very rarely is the investigation taken very seriously by law enforcement. And that's just the unfortunate truth, right? So I wanted to take a step back today and sort of talk about some of these other cases and shed some light on these other cases, bring some exposure to these other cases, and hopefully all of these people who have fallen to these mysterious circumstances can eventually find justice. So of course, the first one is Nolan Wells. We talked briefly about Nolan at the beginning of this video, and we've made several videos about him. Long story short, 18-year-old who went to Horn Island to party with his friends. His friends left him on the island and said they don't know what happened to him after they left him. Lots of information has come out since then. His body turned up 2 days later under very mysterious circumstances. An autopsy was performed. Critical information was withheld from that autopsy. Nolan Wells' family wanted an independent autopsy done because of the history of Mississippi law enforcement not dealing with investigations into Black death with any sort of urgency. So of course they wanted an independent autopsy done, and that independent autopsy has been inconclusive Mostly because some of the body parts have not been sent to them, right? So some of the critical body parts used to determine if foul play was suspected have not been sent to the medical examiners conducting the independent autopsy. Of course, the investigation into Nolan Wells' death is still ongoing. There is new information coming out all the time, including a witness who just said that they saw Nolan Wells in an altercation on Horn Island and said they were going to be going to authorities with the relevant information of what they saw and what they witnessed on Horn Island that day. So unfortunately, this is not the only case of mysterious unaliving of a black person in this country. I can think of 6 others just this year alone off the top of my head. There's an 18-year-old named Daniel Erving who, on April 13th of this year, decided to go fishing in North Texas with 2 of his friends. The 3 of them arrived at their fishing spot. They decided to jump off of a bridge and go swimming. And, of course, only the 2 friends ended up coming back. Police investigated and determined that Daniel Erving apparently drowned after jumping off of the bridge. After this investigation, the police also determined that the friends who were with Daniel Erving tried to get rid of evidence that they were with Daniel. So apparently, after Daniel drowned, they took Daniel's car to drive away from the scene, and they tried to discard of his phone and clothes to make it seem like Daniel was never with them. So, unfortunately, this case is still an open investigation. The police, of course, are saying that he died by natural causes. So here we have yet another mysterious situation where Daniel Erving, a black guy, goes out fishing with 2 white friends. He dies under mysterious circumstances. His friends are caught discarding evidence that they were with Daniel. Police investigated, and so far there have not been any murder charges or manslaughter charges to come from this. The only thing that the friends have been charged with so far is tampering with evidence. Speaking of tampering with evidence, on July 4th, the same day that Nolan Wells went missing, another young black guy would lose his life mysteriously in Lexington, Kentucky. 18-year-old Tyler Smith apparently went to a July 4th party with some friends. Police were called to the party after midnight around 1 a.m., and Tyler Smith was found with a single gunshot wound to his head. The friends who were at the party told police that Tyler Smith just did it to himself. They apparently handed him a firearm and he just shot himself. Lexington police have investigated this mysterious situation, and so far there have been no murder charges or manslaughter charges. So here we have Tyler Smith, another young black guy, found shot to death at a party, and the only thing that the person who lives at the house where the party was being held is being charged with is once again tampering with evidence. That's where that case sits so far, and we are hoping that we get justice for Tyler Smith. August 3rd of this year, once again in Mississippi. Of course, Nolan Wells happening in Mississippi. This particular case happened in Jackson, Mississippi. 29-year-old Tassia Fortune, mother of 4 children, was found hanging from a tree in the backyard of an abandoned house. So far, this investigation is still ongoing, according to Jackson, Mississippi law enforcement. 1 person was detained and questioned involving the unaliving of Tassia Fortune. However, that person has been let go, and police have yet to find any significant evidence or find anyone involved in the unaliving of Tassia Fortune. That case is still ongoing. August 15th, the same month, in Raleigh, North Carolina, a 32-year-old black guy was found hanging from a tree. Police investigated, and in short order, they deemed that this particular unaliving of this person was, of course, a suicide yet again. Raleigh law enforcement has stated that there is no evidence to believe that foul play was involved in his death, and there is apparently video circulating of him walking by himself right before his body showed up hanging from a tree, as if him walking by himself is evidence that there was no foul play. Once again, guys, the theme here is not that we know exactly what happened to this people. The theme is these are mysterious circumstances where these people have been found unalived, and law enforcement has shown over and over again that they are not too serious. They're not too pressed about investigating these deaths when it comes to people who happen to have melanin in their skin. Far too often, these deaths are just written off as suicides or natural causes, and law enforcement just moves on with their lives. And this is the problem with this situation. This is what we have to rectify. So this 32-year-old black man found hanging from a tree. Video exists of him walking by himself. No foul play yet. Still under investigation. Juliana Nzita was a 16-year-old girl in Charlotte, North Carolina, who was found hanging from a tree near a church. Now, this situation is pretty tragic because this person was a minor, a 16-year-old girl found hanging from a tree. Police quickly investigated, and before even finding this girl's phone, before talking to the person who found her body hanging from the tree, police apparently decided that this was a suicide and closed the investigation. Now, Juliana's parents are saying that was not something that she ever exhibited signs for. And they're also saying that the means in which she supposedly unalived herself are extremely strange and mysterious at best. Apparently, there was a small blue chair that she used to climb into the tree, but the chair was so small that there was no way that Juliana could have reached the tree by herself. Now, she was involved in some kind of church that was kind of like a cultish type situation, and I'm hearing from some sources that the parents may have been abusive. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened yet, once again, and we are not saying that we know what happened in these situations. What we're saying is, how did the police, how did law enforcement from Charlotte, North Carolina investigate this and determine so quickly, without locating her phone, without speaking to the person who found her body, that this was a suicide and close the case? This is reeking of an investigation that was not thoroughly completed, and it's a theme that we see coming up so often when it comes to the mysterious disappearances and unalivings of Black people. Now we move to Miami, Florida, where June 18th of this year, 27-year-old Tanea Miller, another Black woman, was found hanging in Miami. Once again, suspicious circumstances. Once again, Tanea Miller's family are saying that she never ever would have taken her own life. Police opened an investigation and closed it within 24 hours and deemed her unaliving a suicide. Tanea's sister got on social media and said that they haven't even received a medical examiner's report as to what the cause of death was yet. Remember, this happened June 18th of this year. We are now in August, and they still have not received a report from the medical examiner's office. So once again, law enforcement opens an investigation, deems it a suicide, and closes that investigation within 24 hours. Where is the thoroughness of these investigations? Where is the accountability? Where is the presented evidence that makes law enforcement so sure that Tanea Miller's unaliving was her herself taking her own life? We don't know. And that's the other problem with these situations, with these deaths, is that not only oftentimes is law enforcement very lackadaisical with the way they go about these investigations, but they're so apathetic with presenting the information as to how they arrived at the conclusions that they arrived at. Now, those are just the situations that have happened this year so far. Just last year in the fall, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the situation with Trey Reed, a 21-year-old who was found hanging from a tree at Delta State University. Now, this situation has been the topic of a lot of debate because a lot of people are saying that it was a suicide. Some people are saying that there was foul play involved. We hear from some people that he apparently got into a fight with his girlfriend and was extremely distraught over that fight. Then we hear from other people that Trey Reed, shortly before he was found hanging, was defending another Black girl who was being apparently abused and harassed by a bunch of white people on campus. Now, there's apparently video of Trey Reed going to a store and buying rope to unalive himself. I have not personally seen this video. Once again, this situation is a subject of a lot of debate, and I'm not here to tell you that one or another definitively happened. What I'm saying is that this investigation was investigated by law enforcement and once again deemed a suicide. And my question is, where is the thoroughness of this investigation? Where is the information that was found when they investigated these circumstances? And what information was presented to Trey Reed's family? You see, the problem with these situations is that we all know that if the race of the person who is deceased was different, if it was, for example, a young white girl who was found dead, these investigations would be going so differently, and that's what the problem is. We are not here to say definitively whether Trey Reed unalived himself or whether there was foul play involved. What we are saying is that whenever someone meets their demise, every investigation needs to be taken just as seriously. Nobody's life is worth any more than another person's life. And that's the point that we are continuing to try to drive home when we push for investigations into the Nolan Wells case, for deeper investigations. When we push for investigations into Daniel Erving's unaliving. When we push for investigations into Juliana Zita's unaliving. Trey Reed, all of these people, we want investigations that are taken just as seriously as an investigation would be taken by law enforcement had it been anybody else. I'm sure a lot of you remember the Tamla Horsford case. Tamla Horsford was a black woman from Cumming, Georgia, who decided to go to a sleepover party with some friends that she had just met. They were a bunch of white women who invited her to the sleepover party, and she was feeling lonely and she wanted to go hang out with friends, so she decided to go to the sleepover. They drank, they partied. Apparently, Tamla wanted to go home after 1 a.m., but the friends convinced her to stay because she apparently was too drunk to drive. I'm not really sure how that whole thing worked out as far as her calling her husband to come and pick her up or whatever the case was. Either way, the next morning, Tamla Horsford, of course, was found dead. She was found with her body positioned as though she had jumped off of the second floor balcony onto the ground. She was also found with lacerations on her body that indicated some sort of struggle. And of everyone who went to the sleepover, Tamla Horsford was the only one who was unalived. The police investigated, and of course there was no foul play involved. And this situation was so strange because the other people who were at the party didn't seem to really care that this happened to Tamla Horsford. For example, Tamla's body was found at 7:30 a.m. and the police weren't called until almost 9 a.m., almost 2 hours later. When the police showed up, who were supposed to be investigating this unaliving of Tamla Horsford, one of the friends who invited her apparently offered to make the police cookies, bake them cookies. Such a bizarre situation. The house also had security cameras, but of course the security cameras weren't working that night. So the police who found Tamla Horsford's body went to Tamla Horsford's husband to speak with him, and the husband speaks about the interviews on YouTube. You can see it. He talks about how disrespectful the police officers were when talking about his deceased wife and also when speaking with him. They spoke to him almost like there was some kind of disdain for him.
Go downstairs, answer the door, and the cop says, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "And what's this pertaining to?" And he said, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "I'm going to ask you once again, what is this pertaining to?" He said, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "Actually, no, it's not. It's Leander. But once again, what is this pertaining to?" And he said, "Well, your wife is deceased." So he said, "It's about your wife. She's deceased." That was his exact words. "It's about your wife. She's deceased." And I said, "What?"
Just without any sort of respect. And this is unfortunately a pattern that we see when it comes to law enforcement investigating the deaths of black people. So once again, we have a black woman goes to this party, ends up dead the next morning, and to this day, this murder happened years ago, and to this day, not a single person has been charged in the unaliving of Tamla Horsford. Now, the investigating officers in this situation were on record making racist statements after this entire thing happened, and two of them were actually fired for corruption a while, years after this investigation, not relating to the investigation, but for something entirely different. But till this day, we do not know what happened to Tamla Horsford. Malachi Lancaster is an 18-year-old who, on December 8th, 2024, decided to go hunting in Florida with a friend that he had just met. Of course, by the end of this hunting trip, Malachi Lancaster, who happens to be a young black guy, would be dead. When police started investigating this situation, they talked to the friend who went hunting with Malachi, and the friend said that he shot himself on accident. The police opened this investigation and then quickly closed the investigation, even though the friend who had been with Malachi Lancaster stated two different stories. The first story was that Malachi was up in a shelf that was hung from a tree to hunt, and he shot himself up in the hunting shelf that was in the tree. And then the witness who happened to be with Malachi changed the story and said that they were both walking down a path, and then he heard a gunshot and turned around, and Malachi had shot himself.
We just want to understand what happened to our son.
Sophie says the teen witness originally said Malachi fell from a tree stand, causing the gun to go off, but this is not in the report.
We started getting concerned was when his peers and a lot of people in the community that were interacting with us started to reiterate the tree stand incident.
FWC investigators determined Malachi was holding a rifle when it fired, killing him.
You can't undo what we know. And what we know is that the witness that was with my son did say that story.
When Malachi brought this up to the investigating law enforcement bodies and said, hey, listen, the story of the person who was with my son during his last moments alive isn't making sense. The law enforcement told Malachi's mother, why does it matter? You see, so once again, we have this level of disdain when speaking with the victims or family of victims of these people who are mysteriously unalived. How can you speak to a mother who just lost her 18-year-old son in such a tragic circumstance? How can you speak to them that way? How can you speak to them with such apathy and disdain? The only explanation is the feeling of superiority and racism, and feeling like because this person is black, you don't owe them any explanation. And it fits part and parcel with the level of effort that goes into the investigations. So Malachi Lancaster, once again, case was opened, case was closed, deemed an accident, and that was it. To this day, we don't truly know what happened to Malachi. Now, if you're online, you're going to notice, so with every single one of these investigations and these mysterious unalivings, there's always a group of people who are really quick to try and gaslight you and make you believe that you're crazy for thinking that it could have been anything other than natural causes, as if it's just completely impossible and not feasible at all for there to be foul play involved, especially in places like Cumming, Georgia, that has a long history of being extremely racist, or a state like Mississippi that happens to have more racially motivated murders than any other state in the country. I want you to remember that these people who are trying to gaslight you into believing that of course nothing bad happened, of course no foul play happened, these people are nothing but racist. They're not good people. They're not objective people. They're simply racists. You see, an objective white person, even though they may not necessarily be able to relate to the frustration of black families whenever they have a family member who gets unalived and law enforcement does a quick and dirty investigation and deems it natural causes, they may not be able to relate to that, but they can at least understand, due to the history of law enforcement not taking black death seriously. Good, objective white people can at the very least understand where the skepticism comes from. But when you have the white people who are very quick to jump on the bandwagon of course it was a suicide, of course this was natural causes, do not be bothered by those people, because there's nothing you can tell those people to change your mind. They came into these situations with a certain narrative that they wanted to present, and that's exactly the narrative that they're going to continue to have, unfortunately. So pay no attention to those people. They're not good people. They're literally just the new version of racists who have been emboldened by Trump and his administration. So guys, we are speaking about these deaths and these unalivings and all of these mysterious investigations because there is reason for concern, right? There has been an uptick in these types of situations where black people are affected, right? Where a black person turns up dead and the investigation is quick and dirty and it's quickly deemed to be a suicide or natural causes. You might ask yourself, why? Why is this suddenly happening right now? Well, it's because of the current administration in office. You see, Trump has created and fostered an environment that makes racists feel like it's okay to express their racism. Trump used racist sentiment to get into power. Of course, Trump doesn't care about these racists at all. He just cares about his rich billionaire friends, but he understands the power of harnessing insecurity. And that's exactly what he did. He gave all of these people the message that they are better than people who are brown skinned, and they are better than Mexicans, better than black people, better than gay people, better than trans people. And he fed into this deep insecurity that they have, and that's why they support him. That's how Trump got into office. And since he's been in office, he's fostered this environment where racism kind of runs amok and it runs unchecked. There doesn't seem to be this element of justice and objectivity from this administration, because all they're concerned about doing is keeping all of the insecure people that they have kind of lined up like ducks in a row satisfied. Satisfied with ICE, satisfied with the lack of transparency into these situations. As long as they're happy and as long as Trump has their support, he can continue to enrich himself and his billionaire friends. But guys, I want to stress once again, I say this in almost every single video, this is not about white versus black. I understand that we're talking about black deaths here because it does happen to be a bit of an epidemic and it's a huge concern. But this is not about black people versus white people. This is about good versus evil. I say this in every single video. There are plenty of white people who can understand the frustration and the skepticism that black people have of the investigations by law enforcement into these deaths and unalivings. There are plenty of white people making videos about Nolan Wells and all these other cases who can see clear as day that there are cover-ups happening and that things are not adding up. On the flip side, there are many evil black people also. There are good people who are black. There are bad people who are black. There are good people who are white. There are bad people who are white. So I do not want to give the impression that this is black versus white. It has never been black versus white. Throughout history, this has never been about black versus white. This has been about good versus evil. Objective, open-minded, understanding, sympathetic people versus narrow-minded, selfish, closed-minded, evil people who oftentimes paint themselves as good Christian people, as we see so often down south. To end this video on a good note, I want to share a different story that illustrates a different part of this situation, that it's not always cops who are bad, that yes, law enforcement does have a problem that needs to be addressed, but it's not everybody working in law enforcement. Nashville, Tennessee, earlier this month, Gary Butler, a 44-year-old black guy, thought he was done with life. He had just had too much stress. He was over it. He went over to a bridge downtown Nashville and was going to jump off until Nashville police officer Mike Hotz showed up and talked him off of the bridge.
My name's Mike. Can I just holler at you?
Metro Police Lieutenant Mike Hotz had rushed to the scene with other officers.
I was mad when he first came because I was telling all the officers, don't come any closer. I'm going to jump if you come any closer.
Lieutenant Hotz took the lead and gently spoke about others he had helped who felt the same hopeless feelings.
I just want to help you talk through this worst day of your life.
After some tense moments of them speaking to each other, Mike Hotz helped Gary Butler realize that whatever he was facing at the time wasn't worth ending his life over. And it's illustrated by this beautiful image of them hugging after Mike Hotz talked him off of the bridge. Now, as you can clearly see, Mike Hotz is a white police officer. Gary Butler is a black guy. So please, please, please understand that this is not all police officers. It's not all black people. It's not all white people. This is a very caring police officer who helped this black guy who was about to end his life. And the black guy spoke after to news outlets saying that if it wasn't for that officer being there, he most likely would have ended his life. So guys, please understand that this is in no way saying that all white people are bad. It's in no way saying that all black people are good. What it's saying is that there is a very big discrepancy in the way law enforcement handles the death of black people, and that discrepancy needs to be addressed. I hope that justice comes swiftly for every single person that I've mentioned in this video and the people that I didn't mention. Once again, happy birthday to Nolan, who would have been 19 years old this week. We will continue covering these cases, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.